Hi, thank you so much for having me today. George, thank you for such a wonderful presentation. Kind of get a tendency to get just focused in on your own sector, and it's nice to hear what's going on in the rest of the world and outside of the space sector. So my name is Jourdan Johnson. I perform research looking at the future of space, typically from an international affairs perspective, but I also look at it from legal and as well as economical. So if you can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So in 2021, the space industry grew by 9%, and this is according to the annual space report published by the Space Foundation. The commercial sector increased by 6.4%. Government spending increased by 19%. That's accounting for 12% of the global share. The industry is up 55% from 2012 and has had a 5-year trend of uninterrupted growth. The Space Foundation predicts continued growth even through economic downturns, and by 2026, the market is forecasted to be $634 billion. Next slide, please. So challenges for commercial space do exist. Growth has slowed, and this is not due to lack of interest, as exemplified by the estimated 400,000 prospective tourists for the Artemis launch and the excitement surrounding James Webb, but because of issues related to supply chains and other problems, such as geopolitical tension, natural disasters, workforce shortages, evolving international norms, and changes in investment strategies, all of which are impacting the industry. Next slide, please. So first, looking at supply chain issues. Supply chains create significant complications for the space sector by altering lead times and logistics. Satellites make up a large portion of the global space economy, as you can see from this infographic. The industry is still growing, but is suffering from supply chain restraints. For example, in producing a constellation, you need to be able to purchase products and services at scale to reduce cost. But it is vital to remember that current methods of production, which utilize small machine shops, were never meant to scale. One method around this was sourcing material from other industries, like the automotive industry, but now they are also having supply issues. The 2022 Space Tech Expo had a panel that discussed how supply chain issues stymie growth for new space and legacy companies. The panel of experts recommended using new technologies like 3D printing and digital engineering, stating new software can offer solutions to some of the supply chain issues. Next slide, please. World affairs are also altering the terrain of the industry. When looking at international affairs, it becomes clear nothing is getting easier. The new norm is functioning in a destabilized environment. Current ongoing geopolitical tensions affect whom you can partner with and where your parts can be manufactured. Again, this exacerbates supply chain and workforce issues. In addition, climate crises such as flooding, heat waves, and major storms threaten every industry. Companies need to have responsive plans in place to combat these uncontrollable elements. Efforts also need to be made by domestic companies to integrate new space players into the Space Club. Next slide, please. So looking at issues related to the workforce. The space industry combines many sectors and needs a workforce that utilizes transdisciplinary knowledge, people who can draw expertise from multiple fields. And we are competing with other tech industries for emerging talent. But we face an even harsher competition because of the complexity of space. Training the workforce of tomorrow is the main priority for the sector. However, we need to prepare the workforce of today as well if we are going to reach the projected $1 trillion space economy by the end of 2030. Some suggestions involve using augmented reality to support projects and to help cross-train employees. And this goes back to the Space Expo panel recommending digital engineering as a solution. So this is supported by legacy companies. There is a focus on domestic talent, but the focus is also on developing talent in states entering the domain. Partnerships and allyships are integral to the continued development of a secure space industry. Next slide, please. So here we're looking at challenges in commercial space related to frameworks. So changing frameworks also create challenges for the sector. Standards and requirements will get more defined, making planning more straightforward. But until new frameworks are normalized, they will continue to contribute to disruption. The good news is that the industry will be partly responsible for developing norms through trial and error and a bottom-up approach. But companies need to understand that just because you did it one way today does not mean you will do it the same way tomorrow. And companies will be required to keep up with changing standards. For example, objects produced for use in space will have to meet the new criteria. Satellites may be required to have refueling options or the ability to communicate with other operators. Space situational awareness and space traffic management are primary focuses for the United States and our allies in space. The downside is that these new technologies and requirements can increase the cost of operating in space. As national and international bodies discuss the future of the domain, companies will need to remain flexible and ready to meet the needs of the changing industry. Next slide, please. So funding. 2021 was a massive year for space investment. 2022, the sector is still growing, but funding appears to be more pragmatic. To get funding in space, you have to prove that what you are doing will work in space. It can be challenging to become a trusted brand in the sector without actual results. The government wants a thriving, competitive space industry, but due to the role of space in the national security and defense, it can be difficult for unvetted entities to receive funding. The way for companies to prove they understand the industry requirements and the long-term objectives will be by receiving a space sustainability rating. A positive rating will open up funding opportunities. Next slide, please. The space sector faces challenges, but innovation and technology offer solutions for many of these issues. Utilization of new technologies to train a thriving workforce and to create an adaptive supply chain. Doing this through new manufacturing methods and the adoption of software that can be used to lead today's workforce. This means the workforce will continue to diversify and talent will come from a multitude of backgrounds. The change will also occur when there are clear objectives for partnerships and acquisition models, which is helpful for entrepreneurs and established leaders. We'll see the integration of international norms of operations and behaviors established through industry and governmental frameworks, which could increase costs in the short run, but offer stability for the long term, which is essential for investors and ensuring projects. The industry will continue to grow and evolve, creating more opportunities such as in-space manufacturing, onboarding services, constellations, habitats, lab and testing facilities, mining, energy production, and data storage. Even with all the challenges facing commercial space, the good news is that we still have a bright future and it can include everyone. Thank you.